Hello, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining another episode of the Data Science Job Search Tips session. We've done this many times in the past, probably like 4 or 5 times each year. And every time we do this session, we learn something from the audience as well. So I hope you guys can, feel free to ask as many questions, as you have when I go through the presentation. So hopefully this session is useful. Let's get started. First of all, just quick introduction to WeCloudData. We are the organizer of some of the meetups you might be involved in. And we also recently launched something called WeCloud Open. So we have some, free resources that we share with the community. If you would like to access, our free Python and SQL and also workshop content, you can go to learn.weclouddata.com. You just need to create an account, and I'll let you know where to find these, material. If you would like to join some discussion, you can find us on Discord with this link. I believe our program manager, Adam, has already shared the link with you. He will be sharing that on Zoom again if you just joined this event. You can also follow us on YouTube. I think we upload most of the event recordings. We try our best to keep up with all the events we do and all the recordings, and sometimes we're short-staffed. We don't really have a lot of time to sort of edit all of these videos, but we try our best to upload the content to YouTube as well. So try to follow us. We have workshops, and I think we'll have some other free courses we're going to launch during this summer as well. Speaking of the WeCloud Open, you can find that on our website. You can just go to I think weclouddata.com and then WeCloud Open. Right now we have two open courses. One is Introduction to Python. The other one is SQL. So these are pre-recorded, lectures, and there are exercises as well. If you would like to learn Python and SQL, it has a lot of details actually. For Python alone, I think we have 400, page slide. So yeah, if you want to refresh your knowledge on Python, you haven't done it for a while, you can look into that as well. And we do live class events as well. So sometimes we just go through the Python course. We plan to do that 3 times a year. So the next event hasn't been posted yet. We also have some other, open workshops, such as BI, data engineering. So you can find some of those recording on our learning portal as well. Our learning portal is learn.weclouddata.com. You can sign up for an account and access it. So this is what our students use for like, as a learning platform. So right now, the students as well as the community users are accessing the same platform. So it's not really separated. So this platform is not really built for for an open community in the past. So we're trying to add some features, but it's not perfect right now. If you want to access the open classes, you can go to learn.weclouddata.com/open, and you can find, if you filter on self-paced courses, you'll find the SQL and Python courses. Okay. Yeah, so that's the open course. I hope you'll take advantage of it. And also, if you are in a job market for a data science and data analytics job, you can look into our career guide as well. We published a career guide, a couple of months ago. It has a lot of details. Tonight we're talking about job search. So we have if you prefer to read, then we have a lot of details regarding how to write resumes and how to prepare for interviews. But I'm going to go through a presentation tonight as well. Okay. All right, back to the presentation. WeCloudData is a data science training academy. We have since launched data engineering, BI, and also machine learning engineering boot camps as well. if you're interested in learning data science and also, most importantly, get a data scientist job. We have a full-time and part-time program that's starting this month. So you still have time to consider joining this cohort if that's what you're looking for, or maybe you're shopping around. We have two different types of data science boot camps. One is the full-time. The full-time boot camp, runs for 3 months. We help students build portfolio projects. And most importantly, I think the key differentiator here is that we put students on real, client projects, so you gain real life, experience. So this whole boot camp is experience building. Without experience, it's very hard to get interviews in today's job market. And especially tough for beginners, right? And also we offer 6 months of one-to-one career mentorship. A lot of students don't realize the benefit of it until they start the mentorship. So this is also really awesome service that we offer to the students. So we have a lot of add-on value compared to other competitors or boot camps. And the amount of support we provide, I think is, cannot be matched by our competitors, because no one else is offering real client projects, and that's included in the same amount of tuition fees. And in terms of what we cover, we focus also quite a bit on big data and of course, machine learning as well. And students will be working on the real projects for 6 months. And then we help them with job search. Okay, so tonight's theme is job search, and I'll walk you through a lot of the details. Just so you know, if you work full-time, there's a part-time option as well. Same curriculum, but you do that over 6 months instead of 3 months. All right, let's move on to the main topic. So I'm gonna skip some of these slides, and let's just jump right into job search. Job search is two-step process, right? The first step is you need to have a decent enough resume, and you apply for jobs with your resume and hopefully you get interviews. That's the first step. Right now, I understand the job market is a little bit tough. So a lot of people get stuck on the first step, right? Not getting interviews. But I can tell you, the biggest challenge is step 2, not passing the interview. So for those of you who are worried about getting interviews, like the biggest challenge is like when you get the interview, it's even more competitive, right? Whoever got selected, they're super competitive, and you are not, it's not easy for you to actually get an offer. So we have a lot of students who got 5, 6 interviews and not getting any offer. And at that stage, you really need to figure out what's wrong. Like, because sometimes like just not getting an offer while you're getting interviews, that's some sort of implicit feedback you're getting. So that means you need to improve your interview skills. I think having a mentor who can work with you to sort of pinpoint those weaknesses can really help you. But we'll talk about that later. Let's just try to figure out how to improve the resume first. If you have your own experience, it doesn't have to be like in data science, because I think when it comes to resume writing, a lot of times you'll find commonality between data science, data analytics, and other professions as well. Feel free to chime in and offer your opinions or your suggestions. Let's have a discussion. So I'm going to tell you my experience and also how we have helped other students in the past. First of all, there are many different types of job seekers, right? So the first, kind are new grads, right? You just graduated, you don't have a lot of work experience, right? When we look at your resume, it's mainly your academic background. And when the job market is great, companies will hire, will want to, they have a lot of, junior positions. But when the job market is tough, there are actually not a lot of junior positions out there. And that's why some of the co-op programs this year, they're having some challenges because, some of the best co-op programs, they're having a hard time placing their students into co-op or interns. Students are really struggling, even like, they can do everything like for free, but still there are not enough opportunities out there. So obviously there are challenges and we can't really control the market overall, right? So that means it's very competitive even for co-op and internship positions. So how do you stand out? If you are a new grad and you're just trying to find your first co-op or finding your first job after graduation. And the second type of job seekers are the most common, right, type. These are career switchers, especially people coming from mechanical engineering, from accounting, from many other backgrounds, trying to switch career to data science. Right. Sometimes students will tell us like, we're very directly saying that, well, I'm in this for the money. So because they think that it's a career that pays very well, or in some case much better than their current occupation, and that's their motivation. Totally fine, nothing wrong with it, right? But again, because it compensates really well, and it's considered as a very sexy job, right? Data scientist, the sexiest job of 21st century, and that's why it's also getting very competitive, very crowded right now, right? If you have the right background, right skills, you can still get data scientist jobs. But I think it's getting harder for beginners to get into this industry. I think it's partially because the job market is just not that good right now. But the good news I would like to bring to everyone today is that I think it opens up a little bit. In the past few weeks, we start to hear more good news, students getting more interviews, getting more offers. This week alone, we had 3 offers, from students. So looks like things are starting to pick up. So if you are in the process, you got to apply for jobs really hard, because I think the job market is getting better. Okay. But as a career switcher, the biggest challenge is that the experience on their resume, most of the time it's irrelevant, right? So we need to find those relevant skills, right? Leadership, communication, project management, product management. We need to find those highlights, right? And bring that into, a very powerful resume. But of course, it doesn't fix the problem that you don't really have relevant data science related experience. So that's quite a challenge for majority of the job seekers, especially career switchers, right? And the third type of job seekers are actually data analysts or data engineers, or people who already work in the data industry, who would like to switch to data science. So I think they will always have some sort of advantage, but it's not a huge advantage, because going from data analytics or data analyst to data science is not as straightforward as you think. A lot of candidates will consider going, to data analyst position, and then in the future switch to data science. If you're a career switcher, I think that totally makes sense. You can get into data analytics first, accumulate some experience, and then later on switch to AI or some other, machine learning, data science related positions. But it's the same amount of work, because there are a lot of new skills you need to gain, right? Including machine learning, cloud, or sometimes big data is required as well, right? On some of those job postings. And yeah, you still need to work really hard to prove yourself. Otherwise, I think the industry sometimes has some sort of bias. If they think that you're a data analyst, they probably don't think that you can do data science jobs really well, because since you work as a data analyst, on your resume you don't have a lot of data science experience, so it's still going to be challenging, right? But it's better because you at least are very good with SQL. You understand the business and data analytics. That's still your strength, right? But it's not as straightforward as you would have thought. So how do we structure the resume? First of all, there are different styles, right? Some people prefer a role-oriented style, right? You can break your resume into different sections. The one on the right-hand side is also very popular. This is probably based on some sort of online template. It's effective as well, I think. It looks better, I think. But I personally prefer the one on the left-hand side, because I think having a simplified version is actually good. You don't want your resume layout to be very fancy. You don't want a lot of images, a lot of circles. I see people rating their skills. To me, it's just not, it's not useful. You don't want to rate yourself. Okay, because are you going to rate all of your skills 5-star, or you put like whenever you put a 3, why do you put a 3? Like if it's a 3 out of 5, why do you even put that on on your resume? Like you're just telling people your weakness. So we'll talk about that, but try to use a very simple template because it needs to be to the point. I think hiring managers are really just looking for the key information they care about. And we know that the rule is that they don't spend like 2 minutes on your resume. They only probably spend a few seconds, So I think using a simple template is just as effective, if not better. And then you need to create different sections, right? The contact information on the top, which makes sense. And then I think the second box should always be skills. That's just my preference. And some people will put some sort of summary of qualifications. At least when I work as a hiring manager or when I help other companies hire talents, I feel like I always ignore the qualification or summary part because first of all, I have a lot of resumes to go through. And I know it's just a summary. So which means if I'm looking for skills, if I'm looking for experience, I can just go directly to the skills and experience section. I just don't have the patience to read summary of qualification. If you really want me to spend the time to read something, maybe a cover letter, right? But cover letter is more useful when you actually get to talk to the hiring manager, and before the interview, they may read it. But if you're just going through some sort of screening process, I don't think people will have the time to read it, to be honest. So I just recommend, putting skills. Like, for data scientist jobs are still technical jobs. So people care about skills. So having the right keywords is important. So yeah, put skills or summary of skills or whatever, key skills, and try to put it on the top, right? And then it should be followed by experience. Experience is probably the most important section on a resume, and that's probably the part where job seekers struggle the most about, right? Because if you already have relevant experience, you wouldn't be concerned about job search. So the biggest challenge is basically, well, it's chicken and egg problem. Like, how do I put my data science experience on it when I'm not a data scientist yet? We can talk about it today. And then if you don't have a lot of relevant experience in data science, then your experience section is probably not going to be that long. So you can also sort of include your portfolio projects, right? For new grads and career switchers, the project section is very important. But I can tell you it's becoming less effective nowadays because everyone has a portfolio project. So how do you even differentiate? Just having a couple of bullet points saying that you worked on some Kaggle project, I don't think it's as effective as it was in the past. There's something worth discussing, but again, like having experience is always the best, right? And then of course, education. So yeah, I would highly recommend just a one-page resume. And when are you going to need 2-page resume? By the way, you should never go beyond 2 pages because I don't think, if you give, I've seen like 5-page resume, but to me, it's just like either the candidate doesn't spend enough time to summarize it for me, make it easy for me to read, or he's just not good at summarizing things. And then you're probably not a good fit for data science jobs because you really need to be able to summarize things really well and extract the essence, from your analysis and share it with the business. No one has the patience to go through like 80-page PowerPoint presentation, just 5 slides. You need to let people understand what you did, right? So yeah, so I think 1 page is really good for new grads and career switchers because you don't have that many experience anyways. But when you have data analyst background, then I think having a 2-page may help you. Or if you have a lot of product management, business related experience, entrepreneur related experience, it might be worth it putting it there. But it also depends on how relevant they are to the job you're applying for. Okay, so in general, I would say 1 page. And then when you have a column-oriented layout, then it's kind of similar. Then the left part should definitely be focusing on experience. So you should always fix the structure of your resume, right? Make sure you have a good structure and then start to put in content. Okay. Anita has a comment or question, maybe online portfolio. Do you mean like having like an online, like for example, like your GitHub or your personal blog post that has your projects? That if that's what you're talking about, that's something I would highly recommend. I'll talk about that later because an online portfolio is going to be very effective. So I think under the project section, you should include the link, right? The links to your online portfolio. Yeah, I think maybe 10 to 20% of the time people will click on it. Maybe not so much with the recruiters and HR, but if you do make it to the shortlisted candidate, like I think the hiring managers will definitely be interested in checking them out. And that's when it's going to sort of convince them that you're the right candidate. So you'll get their interest to interview you for sure. So having a portfolio, hosted online will definitely be useful. We can talk about that. Mohammed asked about the summary or highlight. Yeah, as I said earlier, it's all about screen real estate. And if you feel like you have the space, and then you can add highlight. But my personal take on this is that if you plan to have 1 page, so every little space on this 1 page is very important. Since the summary is really just a summary of your skills and experiences, you don't need a summary because it's only 1 page. People know where to find the right information because you just don't know if your summary is what they're looking for. Because most of the employers, they're just looking for the candidate they want. So before they read your resume, they sort of know what they are looking for. So they jump to the skills section directly, or they jump to the experience section. I don't think they will have a lot of patience to go through the summary and highlights. So yeah, that's just my personal experience. Okay, so let's talk about each one of these. I think for contact information, right, your name, you should include your email, LinkedIn. If you have a GitHub, I think including your GitHub link will be good. And also if you have blog post, then having your blog post link as well. And just yesterday, we noticed that we had a student that we referred to a hiring partner, and after a month, it's a digital analyst position, and we referred some students to the hiring company. Well, you would have thought that the market was really bad and it's really hard to get a job, but it's actually the same from employer's perspective, right? So this referral happened like probably 4 or 5 weeks ago, and then like yesterday I got a message, a Slack message from the person who referred our students, and she said that we were trying to contact one of the students that we're interested in, and we couldn't reach him. So there's like no response from the student. And my first reaction was that the email address was wrong. And it turns out that I was correct. And then I talked to the student, and the student said, oh, shoot, I made a mistake in my email. So absolutely make sure that the email or whatever, because sometimes the email, you put a link on it, right? So the text is correct, but somehow the link associated with it, you made a mistake. So when people click on the link to send you an email, if it's a PDF, right? So what a shame. Like you should always make sure that the contact information is accurate. Okay, so don't make silly mistakes. But interesting thing I learned is that they must have received hundreds and hundreds of resumes. But they reached back to me and said, interested in this student, and this job is still not filled, in a month. So they interviewed a lot of people. The job is still there. So what does that tell us? It's also not that straight easy for the employers to find the right candidate. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. You may think that, well, with hundreds of people applying for one job, it's very easy for companies to hire someone. It's not, because the cost is really high. First of all, they cannot interview all 500 applicants, and that's why they have to do the screening. And most of the time, they will screen out some good candidates because they just don't have the time to go through all 500 resumes. And some good candidates, they're just not good at writing resumes, so they get screened out, right? And then we finally get to interview some of them are like really skilled, and they may not even want to join your company. Maybe they get other offers, right? So yeah, when you look at this funnel, and it turns out that sometimes it's also not that easy for the hiring companies to find the best or the right candidate. And sometimes it's the compensation doesn't align, all kinds of reasons, right? But definitely don't make silly mistakes. Like the information needs to be correct so people can reach you. Okay. Then key skills. It would be great if you can put your key skills into different sections, right? So whether it's programming, your machine learning skills, your big data skills, analytics. And I think for key skills, most of the time when the hiring manager look at your resume, they're just going for the hard skills. I know you can put like time management, you're very detail oriented. This is what like a lot of people like to put on their resume, but it's not very effective because you don't have to tell me that you're detail oriented. You have to be, otherwise, we're not going to consider you. So it's just like that's default, right? They would rather look into your experience and see if you actually, have presentation experience, working with stakeholders. Then they can infer how much experience you have, communication skills you have, or something like that. And I think for key skills, they're just browsing through it and see if you have the analytical and technical skills they're looking for. And try to make it easy for employers. I've seen, job applicants, just putting like, 20, 30 keywords, right? But it's very hard to read. So, try to organize it in whatever, way. This is just one approach, right? And so it's easier for people to find the information they need. Okay. There are some questions about soft skills. Yeah, so just from my experience, technical skills are enough. I don't think, the soft skills matter that much. Like when you look for data scientist jobs, you need to mention those keywords in your actual experience. So it doesn't mean like you don't need to put those, like communication skills, like you need to have those keywords. But I just don't think you need to mention that in the key skills. Mention that in the experience. That's just my take on it. Okay. But you can definitely mention things like, project management or product management or product analytics. That should be part of your skills. But when it comes to like communications, managing expectations, dealing with stakeholders, it should just be in your experience. And there's no need to repeat that. I think for ATS, most of the time, it's more about the technical hard skills. Yeah. All right. Oh, Okay, so we're talking about key skills. I'm going to digress a little bit to talk about the skills you need to know, you need to put on your resume, and then we'll come back and talk about experience. Okay. There was a question. As a new grad, is it okay to have my education under skills instead of the bottom? Yeah, Nafis, one of the suggestions I have for new grad is that just always leave education at the bottom. The fact that you want to put education on the top of your resume already tells people that you just don't have enough experience, right? Because and don't feel bad about it. Like, it's all about like, okay, so I think education should be at the bottom, because if they care about education, they know where to find it. It's always at the bottom somewhere on the page somewhere, right? And employers are usually just looking for experience or skills. Do you have the skills, right? So I think you need to impress them, not using your education, unless maybe if you have a PhD or that's very specialized skills and degree, that might help. But I think in general, like, companies will prefer, for example, a data scientist who has a computer science background. But if it's a requirement, the ATS will work. Like, they're going to look for the computer science or masters if that's what they are looking for. But on the resume itself, because employers are going through so many resumes, if I see like education on the top, I usually just, you don't have to tell me, I know, okay, this is a new grad, because they put their education on the top, right? But you need to clearly prioritize your experience, and whatever project experience will be much more important than your education. Because if they care about education, they will find it. You don't have to remind them. But it's that first 1 to 2 seconds when they look at your resume, right? The first thing they see is not those details in the bullets. It's the structure. Like, when I look at a resume, like, it's this, that's why I don't like messy, in it, like, resumes. It's very, the first 2 seconds is probably just like you see the whole resume, you see the structure, and then now you're just starting to find, okay, I'm looking for skills, I'm looking for experience, right? You don't have to remind them about your education. Yeah, and it sort of leaves the impression that you're like, someone who's a little bit more junior, so you're prioritizing your education. But you may have a question. So I'm a new grad, so I don't have a lot of experience. Then if I don't put education on the top, I don't have a lot of experience I can put on the top. Well, I guess the only way to fix this is just you need to work on more projects and put more experience. You have to push yourself to do this, right? All right, let's talk about the key skills. For technical skills, they're depending on what the companies need, right? Sometimes you have to read job descriptions, and you have to tailor that a little bit. You can always have like a more generic version that you use to apply for 80% of the jobs. But for 20% of the jobs that you're really interested in, you can put a little bit more time on it. So you can read the job description and tailor the keywords. Because it's impossible to put all the relevant keywords on your resume. Sometimes companies are looking for product analytics, growth analytics, but for another company, it might not even be relevant, right? So it depends on the job description, and it can remove 20% of the keywords and add another 20% new keywords. It depends. But just from a technical perspective, I think there's some keywords that you don't want to miss, right? I think we did a job market session maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. So we mentioned that for data scientists and data analytics jobs, I think SQL, Python, these are some of the keywords. I'm pretty sure everyone will put that on their resume, right? But it will be nice to mention some other skills, right? Such as machine learning. But of course, you can break it down, like classification, regression. Some people like to mention specific algorithms. That's totally fine. You can mention packages like, PyTorch, because in the job description, they'll mention that. By the way, we're publishing a job market insight report at the end of the month. And it's going to have a lot of good insights on the current state of the job market, and it's broken down by different cities. We'll let everyone know once we have that ready. Okay. Yeah, and then there's some other skills I think that will be nice to have on your resume that can make a little bit difference. Things like Apache Spark, and some companies will require Spark skills, and it depends on the industry. If you're interviewing for a digital analytics or ad tech company, right, that does advertising, so that means they're dealing with massive amounts of data. The banks, telecom, they're typical big data users, right? Consumers. So having knowledge and skills about Apache Spark, distributed systems will definitely help, right? How much of a help? It really depends, because sometimes some companies will think that you can just get hired and they'll train you, right? But some companies, they may think that it's actually something you need to know, because it depends on which stage the company is at. Sometimes the company will actually they're more sophisticated. They're hoping that the person they hire, they already understand a lot of these technologies in detail, with in-depth knowledge, so you can do performance tuning and things like that. But for some other companies, maybe it's the data engineers who are doing all the tunings, and they just want the data scientists to be able to write Spark data frame code and Spark SQL code without worrying too much about the performance tuning. Then the requirement is not that strict, right? Because they know you can just learn the API really quickly, but it doesn't make you a Spark expert. It's going to take some time for you to become an expert in a new technology, right? Having knowledge about, like, for example, one of the cloud platforms such as Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services will be useful as well. I think you should always mention at least one cloud platform in your resume. And I don't think you need to tell people that you're expert in all three clouds. It's hard to find someone who knows everything. Mentioning AWS will be fine, I think. And when if the company use Google Cloud, you can always justify that. You can tell them that it's quite easy for you to learn Google Cloud if you already know AWS, right? Yeah. So don't quote me on this. You don't have to put all of these, skills in this chart and this diagram in your resume, because some of these are very specific to big data, and not mentioning MapReduce is not going to hurt you, because it's almost considered as a legacy system now. But even though MapReduce still powering a lot of the systems, like Apache Spark is based on this MapReduce concept as well, and people don't really use pig anymore. It's just, well, I guess this is my legacy slide that I use for other purposes. But I'm just, letting you know that other than Python and SQL, scikit-learn, PyTorch, I think if you want to stand out, you need to include some of the skills such as cloud, big data, databases, and all of these will help. Okay. All right, I see some questions. I'll get back to you guys. Okay. So yeah, keyword indeed is very important. But what kind of keywords you put? Again, my suggestion is that you have a generic copy of your resume that you use to apply for 80% of the jobs, right? That you're hoping that you can get through ATS. And for 20% of the jobs, you want to tailor that. Then the keywords you pick depends on the job description. You're trying to match your skill set as closely as possible to what the job is asking for. And you have to do some, study and research and just read the job description and tailor your keywords. That's important. Okay. And now we're moving on to the experience part. Okay. So this is probably the hardest part, right? If you haven't worked as a data scientist, then how should we explain our experience to hiring companies? So I see a related question. Should I include non-relevant work experience on my resume, or just focus on relevant projects? My recommendation to Abby and everyone, on this call tonight is that I think you should focus on relevant projects, because your non-relevant work experience, right? Let's say in mechanical engineering, in process engineering, or in some other fields, it's not really adding any value. You can you can remove those experiences from your resume, and it's totally fine. But if you happen to have strong project management experience, leadership skills, and those kind of qualities, good, you can still mention that, but like just don't spend 5 bullet points explaining your past job. That's not relevant to data science. Maybe just highlight the things that are relevant. Or if you have worked on 3 jobs in the past and none of them are related to data science, then just group them together and just summarize it. And highlight the analytic skills, presentation skills, leadership skills, project management, product management, and highlight those experiences. But then you absolutely need to have some relevant experience, right? So you don't call that work experience. In this section, the heading could just be experience. And you're letting people know that these are the experience that are related to data science or related to this job I'm applying for. So you're just highlighting the things that matter for this job, which totally makes sense. So hiding some of your experience, from the past is totally okay. You don't have to, be stressed about it. Like, you're not really lying to people. You're just prioritizing things. Like, you're just prioritizing the things that you want to focus on. I think that's one of the important skills that data scientists need to have anyways when you work on data science, right? We're always doing feature engineering, data cleaning, pre-processing. We're finding features that are more predictive, having more predictive powers. It's all about finding the relevant features, and it's the same for your resume, okay? And because you choose to only have one page, and that's why you need the most relevant information. So if it's clearly an experience that's not adding value, just remove it. And people can challenge you and question you during an interview, but the good thing is that you move on to the interview stage and let them challenge you. You will find ways to justify that, right? And they will ask you about, oh, how come you have a gap? But you're in the next stage. That's the most important part. Like, the biggest challenge for most of the job seekers right now is you're just not moving on to the next stage, right? And if you, okay, so here I list, company A, right? So if you happen to have some experience, for example, in our bootcamp, the students will work on real life projects. They are able to put some real project experience on the resume, right? So the way we recommend students to write their experience, to talk about their project experience, is that don't be too technical. We've seen a lot of resumes when people describe their experience with their machine learning and data science projects, right? You have 5-6 bullet points, and it's all about the models you build, the feature engineering, the PyTorch, the hyperparameter tuning, and all of those, like, feature importance and improved, model, like, you have an accuracy of 95%. It's just not useful from my perspective, right? When you describe your experience, experience means that, are you the person the hiring team would like to work with? Like, can you work well in a team, right? Because there's so many skilled candidates out there, and the companies are just looking for the right fit. The right fit sometimes is not the person who have the strongest skill. It's like the person who can blend in and work really well with the team, not just the data science team, the data scientists. It's the person who can also work really well with the business as well, because you always need to explain things to people when you work as a data scientist, right? I think with ChatGPT, like, some of the coding part can actually be automated, but that's not the real value of a data scientist. The communication part is important, right? So that means my recommendation for a strong data science resume is that when you work on some projects, like, you need to clearly state, right, what is the objective, and why do you even work on this project, and what's the potential impact it's going to have. And then you can talk about the implementation, the skills you applied, and the impact you have, right? But a lot of times people just don't understand, like, okay, what is this project about? Because seems like it's all, I understand it's a convolutional neural network. Looks like you trained some classification models using deep learning, but what is this project about? Do you understand the business, right? The most frustrating thing of working with a data scientist who is very technical is that whatever, like they tend to skip the business sense, and they just want to jump into modeling right away. That's usually a very negative sign, because if you can't understand what your client, the client could be your company's internal stakeholders. If you don't really understand the big picture, and if you don't actively involve in those, discussions and try to understand, like, there's no way for you to build trust. If you cannot build trust through those kind of communication, it's very hard for you to convince people to adopt whatever solutions you have. You'll find a lot of challenges. We work in consulting, and that's why we put students on real projects, and we know how hard it is, to get a project for our students. And a lot of time you have to prove your value, right? And when you work with companies that really need your help, but sometimes things can screw up if you can't really explain why you're doing something. And sometimes when you work on projects internally, like you're helping people to automate things, they may think that you're taking away their job because you're automating things. So how do you handle that, right? Because you're going to get pushbacks as well. So yeah, and that's why a lot of data science projects fail. And it's not successful, not because the model itself is not good. And sometimes you're not getting the data you want. But how do you get the data you want? You have to convince the product managers to be willing to make some changes and talk to the developers to implement the features to help you collect data. So a lot of times it's also relationship building. So all I'm saying here right now is being able to sort of just explain, right, a project to someone, a hiring manager who has never heard about this project, who has never worked on this project, but in 1 or 2 sentences, let them understand what you did. That's very important. If all they read is, very technical stuff, you'll lose them. It's not that they're not technical, but it's just like, feels like there's not much you can talk about. You can only talk about the models you built, which means this might be related to your job performance, because you may perform really well if they tell you exactly what to do and say, here's the data and here's what we need, and just go ahead and, tune your models and build the best model. But this is not how data science works in real life, right? So always add objective, and it needs to be very business friendly and help people understand what you're trying to do. And if it's not a real project, it's a portfolio project, it's the same. You have to explain to people why you work on this project. Because for those job seekers who don't have a real project experience on their resume, then if you get an interview, the interviewer will always ask you, like, explain your project to us and why did you work on this project? That's usually the first question, right? Is it just another Kaggle project a million people have worked on, or it's something that's, that has some sort of your original idea? And you tell us about your motivation, right? Because understanding a job candidate's motivation of doing something is directly correlated with your job performance. Like, people want to understand the motivation, why you want to work on something, because that helps the hiring manager understand what makes you motivated. And obviously want to be motivated to do a good job on something, right? I've even got calls from hiring managers, right, when we do reference check, and they will ask you, like, how do I work with this candidate? What can I do to motivate this person? Well, it's a really good candidate they're working with, they're hiring. So they even want to know, how to work, with this candidate and make him motivated. I've come across this a couple of times. So again, this is my suggestion. And try to explain your experience in a more business-friendly way. And even if it's a very technical machine learning project, always add some meaning to it. Is it related to some sort of industry use cases? And that's important, okay? All right. Now, another suggestion regarding keyword is that you don't just mention keyword in the key skills section, right? A mistake a lot of job seekers make is that they have the key skills section. They put big data, Spark, and all the relevant skills, but they rarely mention that in their experience, right? So you're basically telling the hiring managers that you've learned a bunch of things, but you have never applied them because they don't see that in your experience, right? So it's very important to repeat the keywords a couple of times, like at least twice, right? You need to mention Python a couple of places. If you have Apache Spark, mention that at least once in your experience, if you can, of course. So repeating those keywords will be very important as well. Okay, when those ATS, whatever, right, screening your resumes. So make sure you repeat the keywords a couple of times in a couple of places, and try to understand the business use case, right? We're still talking about experience, right? But what kind of projects are you going to work on? I think it's important to work on projects that's related to the industry. I know large language model is cool. Computer vision is cool. If you're applying for companies that need this kind of skills, that's great. Majority of the data science jobs out there, it's not about large language models. It's not about ChatGPT. It's about building predictive models or using machine learning just as a tool to actually help them understand the customer better, or actually help them to improve some sort of metric. So you need to understand the business metric really, really well, right? And if you're interviewing for a growth analyst job, then you need to understand growth. What is growth analytics? What do companies care about when they do growth analytics, right? Is it customer acquisition? Is it, then when we do customer acquisition, what are the key metrics? You need to build a dashboard sometimes, maybe it's a data analyst building a dashboard, then it's all about the metrics. If you can't figure out what metrics to work with, then you can't build a good dashboard, right? Same for data scientists. If we're building this machine learning model, what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to improve on, right? Is it reducing churn? But what does reducing churn mean for this business? So I think my suggestion is that when you work on your portfolio project, you need to think about the business, right? Well, I've heard this many times, I don't know business because I haven't worked as a data scientist. Fine. But I think you need to do enough research and work, trying to learn about these business things, right? So stop working on another machine learning model. It's not going to add, it's going to give you some marginal value, but it's time to learn more about the business, because I think that's the part that ChatGPT is not able to replace at the moment, right? But if you just want to do some visualization or write some code, it can be automated, and it should be automated, because in the past, I think, that might be 14, 15 years ago when I was building machine learning models, right? It will take like weeks and months, for you to build models. You get a lot of time to do all kinds of tunings and stuff. And it was because the expectation was not there. Like, people think that, machine learning will take a lot of time and stuff. So you always have the freedom and time to do all kinds of experimentation, right? And now we have Python. We're not using SAS anymore. We have better tools. We can do automation, and people's expectations just get higher, and with all of these automation tools, auto ML, it's not going to replace the data scientist job. Like, it's going to raise the expectation of employers and say that, oh, this can be automated. Now, I used to think that it's going to take 2 months to build a model. Now, can I have 5 models in a week, right? Because there are a ton of opportunities for companies to build this kind of predictive analytics and use that to drive data-driven decisions. It's just going to increase the demand, and people's expectation will be different. So I think ChatGPT like technology is going to just change the way you work with analytics and tools. But I don't think at this point it's going to replace your job, right? But anyway, back to this, I think it's really important for a data scientist to work in one industry and learn everything about that industry and how data science and analytics can be applied in that industry. That is the value. That is your value as a data scientist. And it's instead of going from one bank to another bank and another bank to work as a data scientist, I recommend you take up the challenge, go work in different industries as a data scientist. And you're going to learn a lot of new things. A lot of times it's not a new machine learning algorithm you're going to learn that excites you. It's the new industry knowledge that you gain and gives you a lot of excitement. Okay, you can still apply the same tool, and the tool can be automated. But I think learning the business is something that's really important. That can help you become a better data scientist as well. Because if you only focus on the technical stuff, it's very hard for the business to relate. The way you talk will be very technical as well. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Unless you work in a research team, like you're a research scientist or you work in R&D and you don't have to work that closely with the business, there are that kind of jobs as well. But I think majority of the data science jobs out there are at the operational level. So you have to work in a functional team. You work for marketing, sales, CRM, supply chain, so understanding the business is always important. Okay. And then understand the business in one industry, right? And understand the use cases of data science in that industry, and then go pick your project, right? That would be my recommendation. So, and again, back to, I think we're talking about, experience. So if you have real project experience, this might be, how your resume can look like, right? So this is one real example of a student, and the student worked as data science consultant with us. So she had some real experience. She worked as a research assistant. So she has a PhD. That's definitely her advantage. And then she has the portfolio project. So real experience, portfolio projects, and then key skills broken down by different sections. I don't think publication is that important, but it depends on the jobs. If she's applying for more senior jobs, people may care about it. But that's usually what we recommend in terms of like structuring a resume. But if you read, through these lines and, read that in detail, there are a lot of things that can be improved for sure. But it's a pretty decent version, and the student got the job really quickly. Okay. And I also want to talk about the value of real experience, right? You may have questions like, how do we get real experience? You can try to do freelancing as well and offer people opportunity to do pro bono work. That's probably the only way you can do that. Like, even getting some real project, or even you do things for free for people nowadays, they don't like it. It doesn't mean like you can go talk to people and say, I can do data science for you for free. It doesn't mean they're going to accept it, because it's a lot of hassle. They have to give you access to the data, and they have to sign NDAs with you. But how do they know that you actually have the experience, right? Because whenever you work on data analytics projects, the person who's working with you need to be very much involved. If they're not involved, the project is going nowhere, right? And you're constantly going to ask questions like, why is your data structured this way, and what should, so it's going to consume a lot of their time. So even getting free project will be hard, right? But how do we get this kind of experience? And it comes back to your resume and your portfolio project. So you have to build your personal brand, right? Whether it's your GitHub project, or a blog post, but getting your first project is always the hardest. Like getting your first client, for example. Maybe you want to work as a freelancer in the future. So just keep that in mind. I think when you look for some pro bono project experience, how do you convince people, right, to share the data with you? And I think it's relatively easier than getting a job. because you're offering something for free and you're doing that in exchange for experience. But it's very important that you, before you go to anyone to do this kind of freelancing work, it's important that you can already show them what kind of value you can bring. And having resume is not enough. Like, you have to actually have a portfolio, and you need to impress people with maybe one of the dashboard you built, right, or one of the project that you've done. But speaking of the real projects, I think if you're doing any online courses, right, boot camps, university courses, you will learn the technical stuff. If you're building a data warehouse and stuff, you need to do data modeling. You have to ingest data, right? Data need to be stored in the data lake, and you have to sort of load the data into the warehouse and build data marts and things like that. These are all very technical. So you will learn technical skills by taking any courses, right? But the value of a real project is that or the things that you can finally put on your resume to impress hiring managers or increase a little bit chance of getting more interviews, is that you put things that are not related to, those non-technical related experience. That's the things that are going to help you stand out, right? Because when you work on real project, if you're going to do freelancing, let's say, well, you have to understand what the business need, right? So you have to understand the why. Basically, why are you working on something? So that's why even when you're building your portfolio project, you need to ask yourself, like, why am I doing this project? And how can this project be beneficial for any kind of business, right? But when you actually work with a client, you have to do their need assessment. I need to understand what they need, what's the pain point. You might start by doing some sort of data profiling and just try to understand, their data a little bit. So that helps you with your proposal, right? You need to educate the client about data analytics, machine learning. Don't assume that they just know everything. They need your help because they are probably not very sophisticated in this, in data science yet, right? And when you actually build something like a prototype, a proof of concept, you need to do some sort of UAT as well, acceptance testing, right? So all of these are not necessarily the soft skills, but these are the experience you want to put on a resume, and that will make you different. It's not the experience like writing Spark code that shows more experience. It's actually the experience working with people, working with clients, and working in a team that actually gives the experience, that also gives the employer the confidence that you can actually survive in a team environment, right? And you're going to be liked by everybody. They can communicate well. That's an important factor when people make hiring decisions. Okay. And also experience working with IT. Like, you're always going to ask for data, right? Do you know how to communicate with IT department properly? Understand how to, so these are important experiences as well, maybe for data engineers, but this is just an example, right? And for data engineers, for example, you need to understand over, data architecture as well, things like that. Even documentation can be really good experience to put on the resume. So just keep that in mind, okay? Projects. When it comes to project experience, try to pick projects that allow you to work on something that's end-to-end, right? By end-to-end, I don't mean that you're going to build like a real application, but at least it's not just downloading a CSV and use Jupyter Notebook to train a model. If that's what your portfolio project looks like, I don't think you'll be able to get many interviews, because that just feels like exercise. Any kind of schoolwork you do nowadays in data science, you're going to do some Kaggle projects, right? So how does that differentiate yourself? I think, so having something end-to-end, what I mean is, well, ideally, you collect your data, whether it's through web scraping or working with some sort of API. And then you have to make decisions, right? What kind of data set do I collect? Right? What kind of APIs do I work with? And through this process, you're actually gaining experience, and these are real life experience as well. Because when you join a startup, you may actually need to do web scraping, and if you have done that in the past, that will be your experience, right? But I understand it's never perfect. Sometimes the things you would like to work on, it's you just can't find any data, public data, right? That would be hard. So, so if you can't have, if you can't set up data ingestion or data collection process yourself because of some of the limitation, then at least try to find a Kaggle data set, right? Or data set from Google somewhere that's more complex. It should definitely not be one CSV file. Maybe find something that has 3 to 4 data sets, or 5 data sets. And you can actually use that to properly create a small database, create a few tables, and write SQL to prepare data. And that's important because when people ask you about your SQL experience, you want to tell people that you have created database and tables and you have sort of done the ER diagram and stuff, right? And you write, most importantly, you write SQL to process data. Because when you work as a data scientist in a company, majority of the time, the data is not sitting on your laptop, right? It's not toy data set. The data always sits in a database or in a data lake somewhere. So you have to write SQL or Spark SQL to retrieve, extract, and process the data. So having that experience is also important, right? If you have ever only worked with CSV file, that just tells people that you don't have experience. Like you can do something very simple, but right, creating a database, loading some data set into SQL database, it's not hard at all. But that just sort of give the hiring manager a little bit more confidence that you can do, you have more experience, more relevant experience. That's important. And again, as I said, it's very competitive, right? When the hiring manager need to go through 20 to 30 resumes after the screening, right? It's still a lot of work. So every little bit extra information you can share, that matters actually in the decision process. Okay. And yeah, so that would be my recommendation. Work on something end to end and always communicate the motivation. Like, why do you work on this project? Right. You have to find a good way to explain that. And hopefully it's original idea and you design the workflow yourself, right? And you also did the implementation, of course. So having 2 to 3 projects like this will be helpful when you absolutely don't have any real experience. Then you have to, your project experience should probably be 50% of your first page, okay, of the resume. And sometimes you can include the project experience as just group that under experience. That's like your relevant experience, right? What kind of projects will stand out, help you stand out? I think try not to find or go after those, very commonly used Kaggle data sets. All of the data science managers, they've gone through the same process 4 or 5 years ago. They've done Kaggle. They've gone through boot camps, maybe, so trust me, they know those data sets, and you're not going to impress them. You're really just trying to show them something that's different. So in that case, try to find projects that are, try to take on, you need the variety in this case. It could be, 3 projects from 3 different industries, and it could be like classification, clustering, and regression models. Right? You don't have to, list all the classification projects on your resume. And just show a little bit of variety, right? And some of these projects can even be visualization, or if you don't have a standalone visualization project, try to include that in your portfolio project. Like always try to show, create a dashboard or some sort of visualization, to explain your machine learning models. That will help as well. Okay. So that's the project experience. And always include links, right, to your GitHub, to your Medium blog post or LinkedIn post, whenever you can. It may help. So it takes some extra, effort, but it will definitely help you. Okay. Working on something end to end also means that you sort of understand how things work in real life. Where do you gain this kind of knowledge? I think you need to read a lot. Try to read, tech blogs. Try to understand how other companies, tech companies, built some sort of systems. And you can find a lot of good information online now. Like maybe talk to ChatGPT and see if you can get inspired. And because sometimes in interviews, the directors or managers may actually talk about their team and the things they do. You want to have some sort of background knowledge so that you can relate to it, and you can, sometimes it's about small talk. When they mention something, like, does that click with you, right? Are you able to respond to that, or you just quietly listen to what they say? And that will make a difference. Okay, so when you plan out your project, try to learn some business use cases and how the industry actually do data pipelines or data science projects. Go talk to people, friends who work as data scientists, and just ask them a lot of questions, and you learn from that. Okay. In terms of education, I think your degree, certificate, boot camp, I think probably all of these should be grouped under education. You shouldn't have another section for that. Just put that under education. I think that will be fine. And yeah, so that's my recommendation on how to write the resume. I'll pause here for a bit and see if you have any questions before we move on to interview. There was a question regarding someone having a PhD research background. So if one has a PhD research work and published papers, which includes data analytics, but didn't use R or Python, just Excel and other statistical tools, is it okay? It's totally okay. I think having some research experience will definitely be helpful. So nothing to be shy, of. I think you should have the confidence to put that on your resume as relevant experience. When companies want to hire very serious data scientists to do some important like projects, they sometimes prefer PhDs. And so even if you haven't completed your PhD, yet, it is still okay to put that on your resume. And honestly, I think a good data science hiring manager understand that the tool itself don't matter. If you can just do very good analytics work, the tools can be learned. There are way more people out there who are skilled in tools, right, but not good at actual data analysis, right? They can just follow tutorials and train models and stuff, but they just are not analytical at all. There are a ton of people like that out there. So if you can do really decent analytics, right, and you just happen to be using Excel, I think that's totally fine. But is it possible for you to create a Python or R version of it? Like, you just need to put extra effort into it and just showcase your Python skills, because that could be included as one of your experiences. But if that's all you have, then to be honest, the job market is still look at skills. Like, if you don't have Python skills, then you will be at disadvantage. So, but to answer your question specifically, yes, it's something you should definitely include on your resume. Mohammed had a really good question. So in case we have a master's degree, there's no need to mention the the bachelor's degree. I agree. But also it depends on the screen real estate, right? Sometimes you'll find that when you have a one-page resume and there are a lot of things you would like to stuff into this, this one page, then you don't want like 5 bullet points for your education. I've seen candidates with like, 5 bullet points because they've done a lot of education, but if the most relevant one is your master's degree, and that's enough, like you're telling people you have a master's. And if it's not data computer science, the rest of them are not computer science, then yeah, no need to mention them. I think it's not, it's not giving you, like, having one more bachelor's degree is not going to help you that much, right? As long as people know that you have a master's degree, great. And then they still care more about your experience and skills. Education alone is not going to get you a job nowadays in today's job market. It's very different from 3-4 years ago. Okay. But when the market finally open up and it just becomes much better, I think the situation will change. But it's pretty tough right now. Um, Even though we see some good signs and there are more jobs and more students from us also getting interviews and offers, but still, I think it's okay to ignore the bachelor's degree when you have a master's degree. Okay. What about the certificate that is valued in specific industry, like CFA in finance? Do I still group it under education session with everything else? Yeah, I wouldn't highlight that, but it's relevant. It's definitely useful. Like if you have CFA in the financial institute industry, then you should include CFA under education, or you can just maybe just call all of these like your credentials, or and then you can put education certificate. But again, this is totally your own decision. Like it depends on how you lay out your resume. I feel like if you create a new section, it just creates more white spaces, right? More bullet points. And you don't want if you have 2 pages, then by all means, like you can include that in a different section. But if you only have 1 page, I feel like, saving as much space for other important stuff is more important. But it's definitely relevant. You should definitely put CFA in your in your education or in your credentials. Okay. Okay, let's move on. So we talked about the resume, and then how about interviews? I think last year there were a lot of tech job cuts, and recently Facebook did that again. I think it's mainly because the high interest rate market is very uncertain. We hear all the bad news, but I think it's not that bad, to be honest, because if you look at the banks, you haven't seen like banks and some other companies having massive layoffs, right? Even though you see a couple of failed banks, closing. But I think the market in general, like they are becoming a lot more conservative, right? When it comes to hiring, there are a lot of freezes, but it is not that bad. I think the reason why we don't have that many jobs out there is because, first of all, it's very competitive, and that's why it feels like there are not a lot of jobs, and also a lot of companies having hiring freezes. But again, like in the past few weeks, I think the job market is getting better, and yeah, and unfortunately, that hurts the junior level jobs, right? When the market is not very good, companies are sort of hesitant to hire junior level roles, because they will probably prefer, if they only have certain amount of budget, they're cutting the budget, they want to hire more experienced people. They're going to pay more for that, of course, higher salary, but they know that it's probably going to be more productive. So that's why sometimes there are less junior jobs. I think last year there's still a lot of senior jobs that companies can't find very good senior data scientists or senior data engineers. And I keep hearing that from our hiring partners. Okay, and sometimes I would tell them that, well, the boot camps can produce really good junior level talents, but if all you are looking for is someone who's very senior, then we can help you. But with some of the real client project experience, some of our students can actually directly get more senior positions as well. That's the benefit of real project work. Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about some other job aspects related to job search. First of all, I think don't get discouraged easily, even though the market is not good. I think all we can do right now, if you're a job seeker, right, you're switching career, then all you can do is just get super prepared for the final opportunity that's going to come. Like if you're determined to make this switch, then take this opportunity when the market is slow, improve yourself, because when the market is getting better, you want to seize that opportunity, right? And if you're in the job market searching for jobs and you're just not hearing back from the companies, sometimes it's false alarm. I've talked to a few folks in the last few weeks. So some of them are landed immigrants, from India, from US, and during the COVID, I noticed that there are some students who are from the US. They migrated, immigrated to Canada. They will tell you that, one student told me, I think with my experience, like it's very easy for me to get a job in the United States, but somehow it's so hard for me to get a job in Canada. I also talked to someone else, I think yesterday. He is a data scientist. He's very experienced actually, but he's having some challenges in the job market right now, not getting interviews. I think he will get a job. It's just like the job market is not very good. And sometimes it's, as I said, it's false alarm and it feels like I'm not good enough. But a lot of time that's not the case. It's either because it's like very competitive or, and it's just like somehow your resume doesn't stand out, right? And I think the primary reason is probably it's very competitive, but it probably doesn't mean that you're not as good. A lot of people start to lose a little bit confidence and also patience when they go through this process, right? When the job market is tough. But I think when you apply for 100 jobs, right, or 200 jobs, you're not getting any interview, right? We know what the problem is. It's your resume that needs to be improved. So in that case, maybe you're a data scientist for 3 years and now you're having a hard time getting interviews, right? And you use a version of your resume that used to work really well and now you're not getting interviews, then you know what the problem is. Like, even though your resume is very qualified, but you definitely have to change the style, change the way you write your resume, right? You already have enough experience. It's really just about the resume. Just change the way you write your resume and it will work out. And you have to do some maybe testing yourself as well, right? Try to apply for 100 jobs with one version, the second 100 jobs with a different version and see which one has better response rate. You'll have to test that yourself. No one can help you, right? So usually the problem is with the resume. Most people are struggling with the experience, not able to show enough experience. But some people, it's just the way you write the resume and you just need to get some professional help, okay? And I think this is not a job market that you can actually afford to have too many filter unless you are not in a rush, you have a stable full-time job and you're just waiting for the best opportunity, then maybe you can afford it. But for people who are in the job switch process, and if you're actually need to find a job really soon, and you may have been told that you need to be more selective, but in this case, you absolutely have to apply for more jobs, right? And I can tell you that some of the students who have real project experience with us right now, if you apply for 150 jobs, some students are getting like 5-6 interviews, right? So what is that ratio? That's like 3%, 4%, or 5% response rate, right? And I think that's not bad considering someone who is already very experienced still not getting any interview. So that probably means that local experience is also useful, like it's also important. That might be the challenge for new immigrants. But when I look at the resume, I honestly think that some of these, candidates are really good, so I think it just takes a little bit patience. And that's why they probably don't need to do a boot camp, to be honest, right? And another suggestion is that if you're aiming for data science jobs, you need to apply for some data analytics jobs as well, because I think having that interview experience is very important. Like you need to go to a few interviews, practice your pitch, right? And just test out your interview strategy and skills. That will help you improve. And then when you finally get a data science interview, you want to do really, really well in that, right? And also learn how to work with recruiters. I think working with staffing company is very important. And especially like recently, we noticed that referral also becomes more important. Like in the past, I think our students working on real client projects, they have no problem getting interviews, getting job offers. But when the market is tough, sometimes referral just works way better, right? I give you an example in in like most recently, there are a couple of offers that came in. A lot of those are through referrals. And so, but how do you get referral opportunities, right? If you don't have person who can refer you, I think you need to be more proactive. Learn how to, talk to recruiters and agencies. Don't just wait for them to reach out to you. So prepare some cold call emails, right? Template, and try to have different versions, and have to talk to, reach out to recruiters on LinkedIn. And a lot of them are busy, they're all very busy people. So I think you need to be patient, right? If you reach out to 100 people and only one of them respond to you, that is okay. You don't need to feel discouraged, because honestly, they're very busy, right? But you should keep trying. For example, one person that responded to you, for the first time, you want to hear some feedback. You're gonna hop on a call with them, or you're gonna send your resume to them. And if they tell you, sorry, I don't think I have the right job for you right now, at least ask for some feedback. It will be great if you can get on a call with someone, and even if they don't have the right opportunity for you, get some feedback, get some suggestion, and all of these will help you. So having the feedback is really, really important during the job search process, because sometimes you just don't know what went wrong, right? But if you apply for 200 jobs, you don't hear back, that means your resume is wrong. But a lot of times you just don't know, right? So getting feedback is very important. Yeah, so these are some of the recommendations. Now, the actual job search, right? Assuming that you have a decent resume now and you can get some interviews, you have to do a lot of preparation before you go to the interview. Because finally, in a tough job market, you're getting 2 interviews. You don't want to screw up, right? Try to do a lot of research. Most of the times, I think the HR personnel will tell you who will be interviewing you, right? You will know the name of the person. Definitely check them out on LinkedIn, and try to learn their background, where they came from, right? Education, work experience. Try to study their activities. If the person happened to be active on LinkedIn, so you can sort of pick up some cues and their thought process. The areas of interest that will help you, and look into their network as well, and the way they describe their experience can usually give you some knowledge and some clues about the kind of tools they use, the kind of projects they work on, right? Yeah, so if they mention some keywords such as agile project management, customer segmentation, predictive modeling, if that's something that's mentioned on hiring managers LinkedIn profile, you want to make sure you get prepared, because before you talk to this person, you don't know what kind of questions they will ask you. So you have to get prepared, and most of the questions are going to come from their experience. Yeah, so you have to learn what is segmentation, predictive modeling. Of course, you're not going to always have the time, right? But this is research you need to do, and of course you need to prioritize that. Okay, they may have mentioned cloud, machine learning, right? Then you have to get those questions prepared. There are a ton of data science, machine learning interviews online, but I found that most of them are very academic, right? They're asking you something very specific, asking you to explain, regression and stuff. I think most of the interviews are going to be very practical, unless they're hiring machine learning engineers or research scientists. They will ask you questions about the algorithms and stuff. in practice, I think the hiring managers will be more interested in how you handle things like outliers, because these are very practical. They don't expect you to explain like the formulas. They just want to know how you handle that, because maybe the data set they work with, there are a lot of outliers, right? And have you explained models to someone in the past, right? How does some algorithm work at a high level? I don't think people are always going to ask you about the formulas, but if they ask you about random forest and XGBoost, I think maybe 10% of the time they'll ask you like how the algorithm actually work, but 90% of the time they probably want to know like, which one would work better in certain scenarios, right? When are you going to use random forest? When are you going to use logistic regression or decision trees, right? So understanding the similarities and differences among different algorithms is actually more useful in interviews, right? Because in real life, you're always going to make some decisions and say, what is the algorithm we should be focusing on? But of course, I think in practice nowadays, people will always try different algorithms. But when it comes to parameter tuning, it's still very time consuming. So, you're not always going to be able to afford the time to try 10 different algorithms. Okay, so understand the pros and cons. When you have data set that are primarily categorical features, then what algorithms would you choose? And when your data set is primarily numeric features, then what algorithm would you prefer, right? So these are some of the things that I think you need to know. In terms of the interview process, it varies by industries and companies. If you're talking about big tech company, then it's slightly different. For most of the data science interviews out there, with a non-big tech company, I would say it's typically starts from the phone interview, right? So you'll be talking to HR or recruiters. That could be external, could be internal recruiters that you talk to, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They're just trying to do some screening, right? ATS has done work. Now they're still dealing with 30 candidates. They want to make sure that they send 5 to 6 people to the hiring manager. So they still need to screen out some people, and it's more about the culture fit, your communication skills, and to just double check, make sure that you have what you state on, you have the skills that you sort of state on your resume, right? They're doing this kind of screening. I think as long as you are sort of comfortable with self-introduction. By the way, your self-introduction is going to be very important when you talk to HR, right? Because that's how they assess you, based on your background and the way you talk about yourself. So that's very important. You need some practice for sure. Yeah, but generally speaking, phone screening is not that hard, right? Unless they find that you're clearly not the right fit for this job. And that's when they're going to exclude someone. And then, or sometimes it just could be the location, or it's a hybrid job, or it's, and you happen to be living in a different city. So that's what they care about. They want to screen out people that they don't want to waste time on, right? But assuming you can pass the phone screening because you have the relevant experience and background they're looking for, then you're moving on to the next round. The next round could be technical, right? It could be meeting with the hiring manager. Sometimes it's just half an hour chat with the hiring manager before you get to do the technical test, or before you get to talk to the team. Or sometimes company will give you a technical test first and make sure that you actually pass the technical assessment, like you have the right skills, before the hiring manager talk to you. And different companies will have different preferences. And but you absolutely need to be able to pass the basic SQL and Python test. And I can tell you, most of them are actually not that hard. It would be the basic level, like on HackerRank and LeetCode, because there's no point of testing you like really hard questions from LeetCode. You're not going to need that for a data scientist job most of the time, right? It's better to test whether you understand SQL. So But you still need to do preparation, right? Do some HackerRank lead code, go with the easy. You don't have to bother with the hard questions. Even for big tech companies, like I don't think they will always ask you hard questions. Um, Data structure and algorithms are most likely for big tech companies. But if you're looking for a job in a bank, in an e-commerce company, or in telecom, insurance, retail, you're much less likely to get a data structure and algorithm related interview questions. Some of those sometimes are for senior. They may do pair programming and things like that. But trust me, 80 to 90% of the interview are just basic SQL and Python tests, but you absolutely don't want to fail that one, right? And then when you talk to the hiring manager in the second round or sometimes the third round, considering the technical test is one round, when you talk to the hiring manager, what's more important is the experience, right? Whether it's your portfolio project experience or your real work experience, that is very important. They will ask you questions about the experience. Like there's no way to get around that, right? So you'll do the self-introduction, tell them about yourself. A lot of times they will do an introduction first to let you know more about the team, why they hired this position, and the team's mandate and things like that. And then you go ahead and introduce yourself. And then they will start asking you questions, right? So they will start with the experience. Or if they notice that you don't have real experience, then they'll ask you about your portfolio project. They're still interested in you because you must have some relevant skill they need. Yeah, so the way you explain to the hiring manager, right, your project experience now becomes crucial, right? Again, the formula I'm going to give you here is that always start with the motivation and the purpose. Like, why did you work on this project? If it's for a real company, like the real client project our students work on, then it's relatively easier because you can tell people that, this is a client project, right? And I worked with, stakeholder A and B. I work in a team of 3 or 4, right? It's a project team to implement something for the client to improve some metrics, or solve some of the challenges. And then you can talk about the data set you work with. You can talk about the machine learning algorithms or whatever analytics work you do. And then that should be followed by the outcome, right? Was it successful or did you fail? And it's totally okay to tell people that you failed a project. I'll be more interested in, candidates who have worked on something and failed. Because the next follow-up question will be, what did you learn from that? Because I think most people would like to say, I created a very good model and it's 99% accuracy. How much do you learn from that? If your model just like always perfect, right? It's only when you go through you grind through something, you failed and you struggled through some project, that's when you're going to learn, because that means things didn't always work out. You have to change direction a little bit. You have to try different methods. You have to try different algorithms. Sometimes it's the data that's bad and you have to go back and fix the data. That's the real experience people are looking for. If your model is like always 90% accurate, like it doesn't feel like you actually have the real experience. Or you're insanely lucky. Like real life data science project is never going to be that good, right? So even telling people, that's the tip I'm giving today. Tell about a project that failed and focus on the things you have learned, and that's going to impress people. You don't have to be don't worry about it. Like, sometimes like you work on something that doesn't work out, but you can tell people it didn't work out, but this is what I learned in this process, and this is how I think I can improve on this. Had I have some cleaner data or whatever. So try to apply this. I think it will work. But anyways, this is the part where you explain your experience to people. Always explain the purpose, why you work on something, and focus on the impact. If it failed, that's okay. Tell people what you learned from it, because that translates into experience. Okay. And when you explain to people your experience and the project you've done, of course, inevitably, people will ask you something that's technical, right? So they will ask you like, okay, why did you choose this random forest algorithm? Why didn't you use logistic regression? This only happens when they want to ask you more technical questions. But you just need to be prepared. Assuming that you actually did that project, I'm sure you will be able to answer that, right? But if logistic regression is only the algorithm you tried and you didn't think about anything else, then now it's time to go back and at least think about it. What else could I have done to improve this? It's all about optimization, and you have to think up a lot of different approaches and methods, right? And that helps you prepare for an interview, okay? And after that, I think you'll sometimes get a take-home assignment. So it feels like, the interview process is very long. Like you had a technical round, you talked to HR, a technical round, talked to the hiring manager, and now you get a take-home assignment. Or sometimes the take-home assignment actually comes before you talk to the hiring manager. So in that case, again, if you have worked on projects before, then I think you'll be pretty comfortable with it, right? And you have a lot of free time, and then you can always get help. You can ask ChatGPT nowadays, I guess. So I don't think that's a big problem. The technical part is not something I worry about. But the way you present it back to them is really important, right? You don't just send them a Jupyter notebook. Always do something that has extra value or shows extra motivation and effort. It will make a difference. It's, that is just the right attitude to have in a tough job market. And you're just trying everything you can to stand out. You don't stand out by applying for 50 more jobs, but for whatever interview you get, if you can put an extra, just walk extra mile, even sending follow-up emails to the hiring manager, sometimes it will work, right? So you have to think about these and just make more effort. So if you can, like if people don't ask you for a presentation, they just say, work on this machine learning project and send back your notebook. I would recommend you even create a notebook or create a small short video just to explain how you did it. That will impress people, right? You don't just give them what they asked for, give them more, because it will make them want to work with you, right? I hope this makes sense to you. I know it's a lot of work, and when you're getting a lot of interviews, then I don't think you have the time for this. But if you only get one interview, like you absolutely have to work your butt off, like just do more, because somebody else will do that, and they will take your opportunity away. Okay, that's my suggestion. And then again, after the take-home assignment, if you do get another call, great news. I think you move on to the last round, and you're just probably competing against 2 or 3 the most people. You want to impress people, so you need to be fully prepared. And sometimes the directors or the VPs in a small organization will be on the call. That's the time you're going to impress them. You'll need to present the project you've done or the take-home assignment, right? And when you talk to senior leaders, sometimes the technical stuff is not that important. It's the way you talk, right? The way you present yourself, that's more important. So definitely you need to do a lot of practice and mock interview, talk to your friend, present to your friend, just get all kinds of help you can. That would be my recommendation. So yeah, so that's the interview process. Again, take-home assignment is quite common for data scientist interviews. And for BI data analytics, sometimes people ask you to build some sort of small dashboard using Tableau, Power BI, or Excel works too. As I said, some of the best data analysts I've worked with, they don't know Python. They're extremely good with Excel, but they just know how to explain things and what kind of information or how to present the information. That's very impressive. So I don't think the tools matter. Okay. All right. So I think that's pretty much all I want to cover. I'm going to skip some of these slides. Lastly, I would like to say a few words that hopefully encourages you. I think first of all, career switch to data science is not easy right now, right? You have to do a lot of research, whether it's research about specific industries, a research about hiring manager, a research about the companies you're interviewing with. Do your research, right? The due diligence is important. If you're just getting started, make sure you follow a very structured curriculum, right? Enroll in a program or course. If it could be an online course, it could be WeCloud Open, like a free course if you're absolute beginner, right? And try to learn something. If you already have the data science skills, let's say you graduated from a data science boot camp already, now it's time for you to learn some data engineering, like take an online course. Just try to learn a little bit more. That's always going to help you, right? And try to find a mentor, a paid mentor, a free mentor, or someone who's a friend of a friend, and ask for some guidance. And you don't want to be like left alone and just you're not fighting yourself. Like it will be very hard. You need people to help you. So definitely go out there, do some networking. And if you couldn't find friends who can help you, you're new in Canada, then just go talk to many recruiters, and hopefully 2 to 3 of them will respond to you. And then just ask for their opinions and suggestions. And trust me, along the journey, there are definitely people who are willing to help you, but you need to persist. A lot of people just give up too soon. And you need to make sure like you apply for 300-400 jobs, and you need to make sure you talk to 200 recruiters. Trust me, it will make a difference. And build a portfolio of projects. There's no get around. Like you have to do it, right? Because right now I think having portfolio projects is not enough. Like a lot of employers want to hire people who have real experience, and it's chicken and egg problem, right? But it's the minimum requirement. You have to build a portfolio. If you don't have a portfolio, how do you even convince people that you can be a data scientist, right? You have to tailor your resume. We talked about the resume, how to structure it today. Keep applying for jobs, apply for more jobs when the job market is tough. Be patient and persist. That's very important. And keep learning. I think this is, just having that learning aptitude is very important. You don't just always have like 2-3 portfolio projects that you worked on years ago. Like you have to keep adding new ones, and also try to find different ways to market yourself. Like starting a blog post. I know it's a lot of work, but trust me, the people who have tried that, they succeeded. And that's why you need to do that as well. If you can hardly find the time, then just try to find something that works for you, right? It doesn't have to be blog post. Maybe you prioritize your time on networking, right? I know it's impossible to do everything right, but you got to find something that you can focus on, whether it's networking, so you can build your project and do networking. So those are the things you prioritize. Or you can work on the project, and every time you finish a project, you write a really good summary and you publish a blog post, and you publish that on LinkedIn as well. And trust me, recruiters will notice you, because people need to know how to do self-promotion. That's also correlated, with job performance. Yeah, so these are all my suggestions, and I hope this is useful. I still have some time. If you have questions, feel free to ask.
I do have one question.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is that, like I'm currently doing like a data scientist professional certification from Coursera. So my question is that do I put that under skills or do I put that under education in resume?
You can put that in education, I would say. That's some sort of training you're doing, right? Yeah.
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 So that's under skills or education?
Education.
Oh,
Or
okay,
if you feel
thanks.
like, education means something more formal to you, then yeah, have a credentials or a certificate as a separate section. I think that's totally fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just like prefer like convenience. Like you just put them in one section because you don't want to have two different sections, on one page just for education and certificate. Because it's to
Right.
be honest, like it's not adding too much value anyways. I don't want to
Hmm.
discourage you, right? You put that under education. It's when I say that, what I meant was the actual projects you've done is way more important than the certificate. Because in the job market, there's so many candidates. Um, Everyone has certificate, like whether it's from university, continuing education, boot camps, or online courses, right? It's not important, but it's great that you're going through this certification. But it's important for you to just show what you have done in, to prepare for this certification. It got to be the project you have done in this course. That's more important. So combining those, done two certificates, and you have something that you can showcase the projects you've done, and putting them together will be much more powerful, right? But I guess my point is having a certificate alone is not going to work. You absolutely have to show the projects.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. There's a question. When you do self-introduction, do you use the same version for recruiter round versus senior manager round? Oh, okay. So in an actual interview, um, that's a good question. It doesn't have to be different. Yeah. So I think when you present to or talk to HR, um, you sort of understand their goal. Their goal is just to is not to, HR is not going to make a decision for the hiring manager. So their job is not to select the best candidate. Their job is to exclude the candidates that are not good fit, right? So you can't go wrong with them. Like you just need a decent self-introduction, which introduces, your current job, your current skills, right? And it's always going to be like you're selling your skills to them, your potential. So it's all about leaving an impression that you can do the work. But with this manager, it's the same. But you can talk about more technical stuff, but yeah, the pitch can be the same. It's okay. But sometimes like you have to pick up some sort of social cues, like the way the senior manager do the self introduction sometimes also can influence the way you answer these questions. HR is like more following like some sort of standard process. So but when you talk to some hiring managers, sometimes they, I mean, there are hiring managers that are very fun and, engaging and humorous person. The way they do self-introduction can be very different from someone who's, another type of, senior manager. So I think you sort of need to prepare different versions when you do the introduction. And for some of them, like they will do they would introduce the team and what they do. And so on the spot you probably need to adjust your answers, and sometimes like just talking too much about your past experience is not going to help that much. Like so I think the goal here is that you need to prepare let's say, 5 paragraphs that describe yourself, but you're picking the best to answer their questions or something like that. So yeah, you do need to be prepared to be more flexible, but in general I would say the same version will be fine. Yeah, because it's just the 1 minute pitch, right? And after that they will keep asking you questions. For a data science, when you talk to a data science manager, the only thing I would add is probably just letting them know ahead of time that I have prepared something for you today. It's my portfolio that I can present to you. You're not going to say that to the recruiter, but when you talk to the manager, you just remind them, I have something I can showcase. In case you want to ask me about the experience, I can show it to you. So it feels more natural later on, like when you actually bring it up and say, do you want me to present something to you? I have a diagram, I have a project, especially when you're doing the virtual interviews, this can help. But sometimes like the manager will say, yeah, don't worry about it. They have a list of prepared questions. But a lot of hiring managers will want to respect you and give you maybe that 5 minutes to showcase whatever you've done. So yeah, take that opportunity and show it to them. Can you please speak a little bit more about interview preparation for senior data scientist roles for someone who already has master's and 3 years of data science work experience? How would it be different than an early level candidate? Yeah, so if you're already more experienced, I think it's the difference here between a junior and a senior. It's not always about the technical skills. I think it's the big picture, right? So you have seen more use cases, you have worked on more projects. I think they sort of expect that the way you answer some of those questions will be different. I think someone who's more at the junior level, they are only able to talk about what they've done, right? But because they don't have a lot of experience, it's hard for them to show the real experience. But for as a senior data scientist, I think you need to tell them that you know how to work with stakeholders. Like if they hire a senior data scientist, they expect you to do more. It's less likely to be, you know, a lot of hand holding and telling you exactly what to do. So sometimes you need to own things. So they're going to give you a task, but they expect you to make something happen. That involves, you going to the business, side and, just talk to them. Like you need to take initiatives. You don't expect your manager to tell you exactly what to do. So you have to sort of convince them that you have that kind of skills and experiences. So you have to talk about how you manage stakeholder expectations. I think that's very crucial. And also put yourself in this hiring manager's shoes. The person interviewing is the manager, you're the senior data scientist. So if the manager got promoted to a director or senior manager position, you might become the manager. So what would you do if you were in her shoes, right? You have to respond and react really quickly to what they tell you, like all the clues they give you in their pitch, like because they obviously want to, if you get this interview opportunity, they want to work with you, basically, right? Of course, they're still searching for the best candidate, but you sort of want, like, you want them to really want to work with you, right? So in that case, you should leave the impression that they can just give you the goal and you'll make it happen for them. But how do you even convince people that you can do that? Well, you have to use your past experience. Have you dealt with stakeholders? Are you able to do something like on your own, right? Have you managed an end-to-end project yourself in the past? Are you able to think at a architect level, like a data science architect, right? And your experiences working with different kinds of data, that's important too. Yeah, and show them your strong problem solving skills. So that would be my recommendation. But yeah, so when you explain things, I think you should probably not talk about like the models you build and things like that. That's for junior data scientists. You have to talk about your overall experience and how you lead things, and that's very important for a senior data scientist position. And also, if you have any like experience supervising juniors or experience, like that will be helpful as well. That shows experience, right? Yeah, no problem. My pleasure. What hiring managers expect for the NG? Is NG like new grad? I'm assuming so. Except for the new grad. Okay. I think if you're at the interview stage and they know you're a new grad, they're definitely looking for things more than just, or other than the technical skills, because they're assuming that you're a junior, you're going to come in and learn a lot, right? So what you're selling here is the potential, right? But the potential is not that, oh, I have a computer science background. It's more about, are you able to show, like, you're like, everyone can say that I'm a fast learner, right? People will ask you, what is your strength? I learn really fast. But can you actually prove that? You need to prepare some, like, small, like, stories, like, just to tell them that you can really learn really fast, right? And also it's the aptitude to learn, right? And tell them that, like, you're really curious about things, but you don't just say that. Like, can you prove that you're a curious person, right? And sometimes you can even tell during the conversation what type of candidate you are. So you have to somehow show your charisma, like, you have to show your your passion and your excitement for the job. But it's not, it's based on your research, how much you know about this company, and sometimes, like, how much you actually want to work for the company, and the energy level among different candidates. I can tell you it's very different. Sometimes when you talk to a candidate, the energy level is very low, but based on experience, you can tell, like, this person can do the work, but it doesn't feel like you just, like, you will really enjoy working with this person, right? And some candidates, for some reason, like, the energy level is just there, and then you'll always get impressed. So yeah, I think you need to sort of get prepared, but the research is very important. Everything they say, if you can relate to that, that's like, that will definitely impress people. So yeah, so that would be my recommendation. I think you're selling your potential. So whatever work you've done in your grad school, or in school, I think you need to find some interesting things that you can use to impress people. Whether it's like picking up a new skills or something you did on the side, um, definitely not something related to the actual study you're doing. It's usually the things you do on the side that impresses people, right? It could be a side project you do. And it could even be some sort of volunteer work, but it needs to be relevant though. So yeah, but you need to show people that you can actually learn fast. So you have to use fact, you have to use examples. So always be prepared. No problem. Um, and also, I think for new grad, another way to impress people is that your resume need to look really, really tidy, really, really well organized, because that shows um, the the level of detail orientation you have. Most of the hiring managers will want to work with someone who can write, for example, really good documentation. I know, so for example, sometimes you work with project management tools or use Notion or whatever to do documentation. I can tell you, like, in a team, not everyone can do documentation at the same level. Sometimes, like, some team members, when they do documentation or they take notes, it's just messy. So the way you write resumes and the format, the template you choose, sometimes is also, like, related. Like, when you're at the junior level and you're a new grad, you want to impress people with the template you choose as well. So that could be helpful as well. But if you have experience, then obviously people are going to just focus on experience. Yeah. So small things won't matter sometimes. I believe so. I believe the job market is getting better. Um, so, and yeah, we start to see more and more job postings and more students getting offers. So I guess that's another way to tell you that I think things are getting better. Yeah. There are a few questions earlier. Oh, sorry, I may have missed it. Let me go back. Um, oh, there was a question regarding where should I search part-time or freelance jobs? Um, so there are a lot of freelance website, right? Upwork and stuff like that, but it's not that straightforward to get a job. Again, like when I talk about like, getting freelance work, it's more about just getting prepared for that. Getting your first client is always hard. Um, I think if you're reaching out to people to do some SEO or web design, it's like much easier because you don't cost them anything and they don't have to give you their data. And if you design something for them, they don't like it, they will just thank you, but they don't adopt your solution. Um, I'm talking about free work here, pro bono. Um, but if they want to pay you, or if you expect to be paid, or any kind of data work, that means they're sharing data with you. Um, we know it's data is always sensitive, so um, you have to sort of build that trust, right? So again, it's like a it's like job search again. Um, so you have to use portfolio to impress people. Um, yeah, but I think it might be relatively easier than job search in a tough market, because you're offering something for free in exchange for experience. Some people will want to do it. So other than just doing freelance, because it's super competitive there as well, it's even harder to stand out, I guess. You have to reach out to people on LinkedIn and find people who have those kind of needs and talk to them. You need to prepare a presentation to introduce yourself, just getting prepared. Um, Imagine you're running a consulting company. Why would they trust you and let you work on their data problems? So you need to have a pitch deck, but this is sort of like an interview preparation process, right? It's getting you prepared for an actual interview later as well. It will be helpful, but um, yeah, but getting your first project will also be challenging. Yeah. Is there a website to find interview questions? I know there's some interview question preparation website. They usually charge you, but it's not very expensive. Maybe $50 or $99, you'll have access to a lot of interview questions, but you should always start from like LeetCode and HackerRank. Those are coding interview questions. But if you just Google data science interview questions, you'll find a lot of those services. Some of them are actually pretty good. So yeah, you can just Google and find a ton of resources. Do you have mentorship program for those who are not your students? Something like paid mentoring program? Yeah, we do. So the students in our data science bootcamp, they get an opportunity to work on, like, learn the skills in the bootcamp for 3 months. And then the student can work on real, projects, as well as getting the mentorship. But the projects, the real client projects and the mentorship are something that you can purchase as a service, like separately as well. So you don't have to graduate from our bootcamp to 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 get an opportunity to work on a real project or getting the mentorship. Um, so yeah, if you're interested, you can talk to us. Do you have similar courses for business and analysis? We call that business intelligence. So we basically have a data analytics boot camp, but we sort of call that business intelligence because it's a little bit more technical. So we cover SQL, Python, we cover Power BI, Tableau, and then we also cover a lot of business use cases. So those are like mini projects and stuff. So yeah, it's a 3 months part-time program. The duration is shorter than the data science program because there are less things to learn. But it's really good for someone who's considering switching to data analytics. If data science is something you feel that it's going to take a lot of investment, like the time investment as well. So yeah. Well, I think I answered a lot of questions, and thank you for all the great questions. And we have another session on Friday. I think that session is more about the job market, as well as how we actually run our data science bootcamp. So it's like a very detailed, like virtual tour about our data science bootcamp, how we run it, and how we help students with projects and stuff. So if you're interested in learning more about our program, you can attend that Friday session. And yeah, other than that, I hope everyone have a great evening, and I'll see you guys next time. And yeah, follow us on YouTube. The recording will be uploaded to YouTube as well. All right, ciao. Thanks.